Hello class. So for this week, we'll be reading 15, which was written by William Stafford. And there is so much stuff that happens within this text. And so it's a really fun poem to kind of annotate and digest. I've already identified the speaker. So this speaker is actually an adult. Even though the title of the poem is 15, the speaker is an adult who is kind of reflecting on a moment. So in a way, this makes this a retrospective piece. It makes it a retrospective poem. Just like how in To Kill a Mockingbird, Scout Finch, she's telling the story as an adult and kind of giving us a glimpse of like what her life was like in Maycomb. So I'm going to read this poem for us first because that's the first thing you do with a poem. You want to read through it before annotating. So please follow along with me. 15. South of the bridge on 17th, I found back of the willows one summer day, a motorcycle with engine running, as it lay on its side, ticking over slowly in the high grass. I was 15. I admired all that pulsing gleam, the shiny flanks, the demure headlights, fringe where it lay. I led it gently to the road and stood with that companion, ready and friendly. I was 15. We could find the end of a road, meet the sky on out 17th. I thought about hills and patting the handle got back a confident opinion. On the bridge we indulged a forward feeling, a tremble. I was 15. Thinking back farther in the grass, I found the owner, just coming to, where he had flipped over the rail. He had blood on his hand, was pale. I helped him walk to his machine. He ran his hand over it, called me a good man, roared away. I stood there, 15. So what we're going to do first is we're going to kind of break it down stanza by stanza. And first we'll see exactly what is being said along the lines. So, south of the bridge on 17th, I found back of the willows one summer day a motorcycle with engine running. As it lay on its side, ticking over slowly in the high grass, I was 15. So it's almost a bit like a narrative. South, like it's giving us a location, what's happening. And so it's a bit of a narrative style. And on the side, we can say, because it says I was 15, at 15, speaker finds a running motorcycle as it lay on its side, ticking over slowly in the high grass. So, you're going to notice that this is something that's known as a epistrophe, and it's a form of repetition. And you'll see that this actually appears at the end of the first three stanzas. And at the very end, it says, I stood there 15. So it's interesting because obviously it seems like age is going to be kind of like a big motif. And so, because in the title we have 15 and here we have 15 again. But if you look, there is another number as well. It's 17th. On 17th, south of the bridge. So that is something that I do want us to come back to later. But just take note of that first. In the second stanza, he says, I admired all that pulsing gleam, the shiny flanks, the demure headlights, fringed where it lay. I led it gently to the road. And stood with that companion, ready and friendly. I was 15. And so, just like we can tell from the stanza that the speaker obviously admires the motorcycle, so he moves it from the grass to the road. So speaker admires motorcycle, so he moves it from grass to the road. And so here we see him kind of giving all this like visual imagery. Some of the imagery that we see is the pulsing gleam, the shiny flanks, the demure headlights, fringe red light. Like you can actually see like an image, right? So visual imagery, what it does is that heightens the senses and also the attraction that the speaker has towards the motorcycle. And it's interesting because he even gives this motorcycle human-like qualities. So he personifies it. He's like, I led it gently to the road and stood with that companion ready and friendly. So personification, you know, he likens the motorcycle to a buddy, almost like a friend. Okay, so as we're reading, I also want you to think kind of like on the tone. So the tone is like the speaker's attitude and feelings and emotions. And so here we're really getting a sense of this whole like admiration. There's kind of this dreamy tone to it. So I'm just gonna write down on the side here, tone. How does the tone kind of like progress? And so here right now, we kind of like, we're gonna see like the tone like in the next stanza as well. So let me just read that first. We could find the end of a road, meet the sky on out 17th. I thought about hills and patting the handle got back a confident opinion. On the bridge, we indulged a forward feeling, a tremble. I was 15. So here, the speaker is laying down the possibilities of what they can do, of what's to come. So we could find the end of the road, meet on the sky out on 17th. So the speaker imagines driving the motorcycle, and so basically the patting the handle, that's basically revving the engine. So he revs the engine, and of course the bike moved just a little. Right? So he's saying we could find the end of a road, meet the sky on out 17th. It gives you this very almost like fantasy-esque kind of feeling. It emphasizes sky, we could, the possibilities of what's to come, and it kind of gives it that fantasy aspect. So the tone here, going back to the tone, you know, he's kind of like, when he says I was 15, I feel like that's always kind of like more of a nostalgic feeling when you look back on an age, on a certain time in your life. But here he's like, I admired and we could find. So this whole tone over here, it's pretty dreamy. I'm going to try to squeeze that in between here. Dreamy. There's a dreamy tone, right? He's imagining like kind of this fantasy about like indulging in this like adventure together. And again, he's personifying this motorcycle by saying, I patted it and I got back a confident opinion. So the personification, it's like they're like going on an adventure together. So again, that's the personification. And so it almost, also like if we look at the forward feeling, a tremble, we indulge, that word indulge. I'm sure many of us are indulging at home, right? Maybe we're sleeping a lot more, we're eating a lot more, binge watching TV shows a lot more. I know I am. And so it kind of, this language connotes, let me use a different color. It connotes guilty pleasure in a way. that there is this, like, in this fantasy, there's this kind of like guilty pleasure that comes with it. And so here we actually start to see like a shift. Oh, that did not work. Shift. We see a shift in the tone, which is something that I would also just write down. Shift in tone. Like the voice kind of changes a bit. So let's read where it changes. Thinking back farther in the grass, I found the owner, just coming to, where he had flipped over the rail. He had blood on his hand, was pale. I helped him walk to his machine. He ran his hand over it, called me a good man, roared away. I stood there, 15. So, like, before we even get into, like, the language, let's just look at, like what just happened. So what happens here is that, like, as he's thinking, okay, so thinking, this is important. He's no longer dreaming like he was here. Thinking, he sees the owner. And he realizes that someone must have had an accident, and he kind of searches for him, and he helps him back. So the speaker realizes someone must have had an accident. And basically what happens is he searches, and then he helps him, and then the owner, or like, gives him the bike, and then the owner rides away. And here he's watching. He watches rider ride away. And so I want you to think, like, there is a shift in tone, because you could see that in the language. Just in the language, you see that, like, oh, this man is injured. He had blood on his hand. He had flipped over the rail. So this injuries, you see the image. And I think it's really important to notice that here he changes how he describes the motorcycle. He originally described the motorcycle as like a companion, ready and friendly. I was 15, a confident opinion. And then after he helps the man, I helped him walk to his machine. Okay, this is super important and super key, that ultimately it's dangerous, right? And it's dangerous, and he didn't realize how dangerous it was until he saw the adult, until he saw the man. And so what happens here is that, you know, over here we had on the bridge, we indulge a forward feeling, a tremble as 15. It kind of gives you this guilty pleasure. Here he says he ran his hand over it, called me a good man, and roared away. So there is this kind of like break from fantasy, right? And instead, this is a moment when fantasy collides literally with reality. And what I like about this poem is how at the end he says, I stood there, 15. You know, and ultimately at the end of the poem, ultimately what we get is just a 15-year-old, right? Like, he's still in the spot. And so in a way, like, you see this progression. So going back here, when it says south of the bridge on 17th, like, just visually, like, I'm going to come back with my red pen. Bring it back here. Let's bring it down here. So south, we have, you know, like a compass. Obviously, this is north and this is south, right? And this is 7th. And he says south of the bridge on 17th. And so that's where he is. This is where the speaker is. He's south of 17, which is like the road, but it's also a symbol for age, right? Because age, you're always, when you're at a certain age, like he's on like this precipice of change, right? Like when you're 15, you can take, like, okay, we'll start here. So he's 15, right? What can you do when you're 15? You can take the permit test. So the written test, right? And then let's say, so if he's here 15, and then he's on the south of 17, we cannot forget 16, right? He can't skip that. What happens when you're 16? You could get a driver's license. And of course, there are some like, you know, like it comes with some prereqs, also some like conditions, right? Like you can't drive anyone until like a year later. You can't, maybe there's a curfew. And then when you're 17, there it is, freedom, right? But what I like about this poem is that, you know, at the end of the poem, at the end of the day, if all that's happened, he's still just 15. And as much as he would like to be 17, as much as he would like to get this freedom, ultimately, you can't skip your age. You can't skip changes, right? And I think that's really key, that like there's this moment of maturation, right? That like he's still here, you still get to be a kid. And then you're going to slowly make your way to being an adult, which is really 18, but like, you know. And so I think one of the things that you can take away, you can tell, is that the speaker desires older activities and freedom than his age permits. Right? I'm just going to move this really quick so you can see that. But ultimately, like when you grow older, you have more freedoms, but you also have more responsibilities, right? So, you know, like with age comes with change. So that's like your responsibilities, risks, consequences, right? So the motorcyclist, he could have died. Like that could have been a real consequence for him. And his responsibility as a driver too, as a motorcyclist, is to also make sure he's careful on the road. And so I think like this poem is a really great way of like reflecting, of like just an example of like retrospection, where, you know, like maybe when you're young, there are certain things that you want to do that your current circumstances cannot permit, right? But at the end of the day, when you're 15, when you're at this age, he can be a child. He can still be a kid. But then as we grow, when we get more freedom, there also come more responsibilities, risks, and consequences. And so in a way, I think it's also nice to just be present with your current circumstances and your current age and where you are, because ultimately there are steps that you have to take, you know. So I hope you guys enjoyed this poem, and I will post a photo of this as well. Okay, so have a good day. Thank you.